The most important thing really to say about Chinese economic development is that it is incredible. It is the largest single rapid growth in an economy that the world has ever seen or will ever see. It's rather similar in dimensions, that is sort of 10%, 8% per annum growth in gross domestic product a year over a decade now. Something similar to Japan in the 1970s. On the other hand, China is 10 times the size of Japan, so it's 10 times that sort of development. It's far faster than anything that ever happened in Britain or America or Germany or anywhere else in the world. Far larger than anything else that has ever happened. So it is really the whole world turning on its axis. The United Nations has pointed out that without China's economic miracle, the world now would be poorer than it was 10 years ago. It's just China, and to a certain extent India, that has dragged the statistics so that the world has now got more wealthy people than it had, and less poor people than it had 10 years ago. So it's China's development that is giving hope and to many, many people. So it is a vast, rapid development. It is very likely to continue. And if it continues at its present pace, that is doubling, the economy doubling about every 7 or 8 years. If it does that for another 15 years, the economy will be by far the largest on this planet. It's now only about 5 or 6% of the GDP of the planet, but if it doubles like that, it'll overtake Europe and America in about 10 or 15 years. Now, is that a good or a bad thing? My view is that it's almost entirely a good thing. The world recently has become very skewed in that one economy, that is America, is far larger and far more dominant than any other, and except for the European Union. But in the case of America, it's put a lot of this money into weapons and armaments. So you now have no balance of power at all, really. You just have one superpower. The sooner we have some counterbalance to that, the better. And the wonderful thing about China is that it is not an aggressive society. If you look at its history over the last 2,000 years, one of the amazing things about its foreign policy is that it really hasn't conquered anywhere. It's a moot point about Vietnam, there's a moot point about occasionally small invasions into Korea and also obviously into Tibet, but these are just border skirmishes. It's never tried to create an overseas empire. It's never aggressively attacked other large states. It never attacked, except under Genghis Khan and Kublai Khan, Japan. On the whole, it's been notable for its peaceful attitudes towards its neighbours. In a sense, of course, it has such a vast territory to rule it. It's the size of larger than Europe, so it really doesn't need any more land. Its big problem is to hold what it already has, and that plus Confucianism and other things may account for it. But whatever the reasons, it's quite clear that it isn't like England, Britain or America. It's not an aggressive world empire, and therefore if it becomes, as I suspect it will, the largest economy on earth within the next 10 or 15 years, this will be an exception. Usually large economies then go out and try and get other large economies to be subjugated to them. China doesn't have that particular historical trajectory, and therefore I think it's an extremely good thing. Where it will be bad, might be bad of course, is for its competitors. One point that was made to me by an economic historian was that China is in a very strange situation in that because of the rapid introduction of Western technologies, it is outperforming in production of many things the West very fast, at a point when its labour costs are still very low. So there may be a period of about 10 years when Chinese goods are extremely cheap, extremely good, and will completely outmaneuver every other competitor, including Japan. Now that will pose really large problems, and all one can hope is that the rest of the world reacts sensibly and doesn't try and either throttle it or destroy it as a sane competitor. The last point to make is that it's extremely good to see what was until recently considered to be a third world country turning into a first world country, because China is well aware of the patronizing and degrading attitude of the West towards third world countries. It has a sympathy towards India and other third world countries. It is acting as a spokesman and as a support for such third world countries. And this also, as we found recently in the World Trade Organization and World Bank round, this is extremely good because it helps to balance the weakness of third world countries against the predominant powers of the West. So I'm all in favour of it.
Thank you very much.